Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, please stay tuned to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go back to that lemon light city? Sweet.
Hey there, I am really Marty Levinson. Don't let anybody fool you. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at ntnm.org. All of our shows are available on YouTube, close to 300,000 watched. And you can check us out on, you can also join on, you can join us on YouTube and get the weekly notices and all the rest of it. You can also email me if you like the show notices, avy@ureach.com. Let me also point out that there is going to be a Jewish Chicago aldermanic mayoral issue this year. Community policing we're very big on, caps24.org. We'd like to congratulate Commander Waldera, Sergeant Sisk, Officers Stahula, Moore, and O'Neill, is it?
Jones.
Pardon? Jones, Eileen Jones, for the job they're doing in the community policing office. And we have single beat meetings, and we have a police presence every other month, and we're very happy with that. It is a pleasure to introduce you to somebody who has not been on the show for a little over 4 years, and that's 4 years way too long. We've certainly invited him. At one time, he had 2 of the top 10 watched shows we ever had. But by distancing himself so long, even Tracy Butler has passed him up by now.
Oh.
Doesn't that hurt?
Yeah, I'm going to really say something outrageous today to make sure we get the numbers back up.
Absolutely. She might be cuter than you, but,
I think she's got me
you've got
there.
more to say.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's a pleasure to introduce you to my favorite sheriff of Cook County, and that would be Sheriff Tom Dart. How you doing?
Great seeing you again.
So thank you. And by the way, I want to thank Benjamin Bright for reaching out and
Yes.
getting us back into contact. I've actually tried, but, just because you got 5 kids and you're the sheriff full time and,
Yeah.
you actually try to pay attention to your family, that's no excuse.
I know, tell me, where are my priorities? I know. And that South Side thing sort of hits me too, because it's not like you're in the neighborhood. I've got to go to the other side of the world to come
No,
up here.
I know that. You're really on the far end. And by the way, we're both actually originally South Shoreans.
Yeah, that was the thing that we were talking earlier about. I had no idea, because that's where I grew up. My family and we lived in apartments in the South Shore area until I think I was 8 years old, something like that. And we loved the area. And then we moved out to the southwest side, and that's where I've been since then.
Yeah, we basically, I was there till I was 16. We were on the 2nd floor of a 3-flat. The whole block were 3 flats.
We were on the 2nd floor of 3-flat as well.
And basically the whole Jewish community moved north, so my parents moved north with him. And the shame of it was that he wound up selling the 3-flat because he had owned the 3-flat in order to get a rent. He let the other 2 apartments pay for it. He put some money in the bank, and hopefully my mom's dream was a home one day. He sold the 3-flat for less than he paid for it 15 years earlier, and real estate prices here were absolutely outrageous. The 3-flat didn't cover a small single-family home.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because times were different, and it was really amazing back then. And I was so young, so I have very little memory of that part of it. But I do remember there was a great deal of turnover.
Yeah, no, it happened right away. What basically happened is that a lovely group at that time known as the Blackstone Rangers, now known as El Rukin, moved into the neighborhood. Now, it's interesting because I think what really caused the movement were probably the Panic Peddlers real estate guys. Every single garage had painted on it, "Get out, Whitey, or die."
Oh, God.
And inside of a year, there wasn't a white family left on the block.
Wow.
The first moving day, everybody but my dad and my uncle across the street sold their building. We were the last 2 people for 6 months. That was an interesting time of life.
God, yeah. My sister went to one of the local schools there, and we'd been there for a while. And I'm just trying to, I think it was like in the late 60s, something like that.
Yeah, it was like 68 when we moved.
Yeah, I want to say it was right about then when we moved too. And, I'm, now 2 miles away from where my parents live, and I often thought that, years ago that I'd be moving to all sorts of, parts unknown, and here I am, 2 miles from mommy and daddy's house. So I didn't go real far.
By the way, I not that I try to one-up you by any means, but the house studio we're in right now, this was my parents' house. I took care of my mom, and after she was crippled and all that, and I didn't see any reason to move out afterwards.
Yeah, don't blame me. This is such a nice neighborhood. It really is.
Other
than the fact there's apparently a lot of Cub fans around here because this is the north side.
You're right about that. And by the way, my brother in the basement is I shouldn't tell you, I was the rebel on the south side. When they traded, I'm older than you. I never forgave him for trading Louis Aparicio.
Yeah,
to this day, I'm upset. So
to be honest with you, I've heard that from a lot of people because that was a little bit before my time, but that was like the final straw for a lot of people, and then they shifted alliances and all the rest.
That's what happened to me. I hate to tell you, but by the same token, I'll tell you too that I know a number of people that shifted alliances when the Cubs didn't sign Greg Maddux.
Yeah, and a lot of them are still waiting for their championship too.
By the way, I have a basic philosophy, and there have been years where I have enjoyed the Cubs so much that I've watched less than 3 innings of baseball the whole year. I'm serious.
Really? Yeah. See, I go out to White Sox games with my children, and it's enjoyable because the kids can run around, all that type of stuff, and a lot of the other venues you can't really do that. But I don't get out to Wrigley Field. I used to go out there more often, but I just don't have the time anymore. This job is so all-consuming because it's something where just the basic sheriff work, takes a great deal of time. But we've gone in so many multiple directions on trying to get involved with some social justice issues that we feel strongly about. That honestly, the days are so long. I mean, literally, after I drop the kids off at school in the morning, I'm working for the next 11 hours, 12 hours, and then, racing at home to get them to bed. And you look up, and another year has gone by, and you're like, God, I didn't watch any sports. It's just so 5 young kids, a crazy job. I always tell people, when I'll run into folks and they'll say, I haven't seen you in ages. And I always say, if you're not one of my 5 children or one of my 10,000 inmates, I probably won't see you. So it's like, it somewhat limits you in some respects, so you just don't get out and around that much. But for us, we have so many things going on right now. Literally, Avi, since I talked to you, we were always real engaged in a lot of these different issues. But like the mentally ill that have been just horrendous. Just dumped into the jails and prisons throughout the country, particularly ours. It's disgraceful. And so we've been coming up with all these strategies, and we've implemented them. We haven't just talked about it. We've actually implemented these really cutting-edge strategies that we know are the lead throughout the country. And the reason we know is because everyone else around the country keeps coming over to our place to see how we do it, to model it after us. And we get a lot of awards and acknowledgments for what we're doing here, but it's really exposed this fact that without anybody being so overtly cruel, just by, frankly, benign neglect, the mentally ill who for years were stored away in state hospitals, those were correctly shut down.
If they were lucky, actually, in state hospitals, I spent 1.5 years when I was in college working in a halfway house in Uptown for people who had no business out on the street at all.
Oh, well, see, therein lies what the problem was, too, Avi, is that, yes, were there problems with state institutions? Absolutely they were. Were there well-meaning people saying, listen, we got to get folks out of these hospitals, put them into community settings? That's very important. But 2 things. One, there was never any of the funding. The funding never came. Everyone acknowledges that. So none of those structures were set up, so they just shut the hospital down and let everyone go, and you get this mess. But the other part of it is, and most everyone agrees with this, is that there are certain people, because of their level of sickness, their ability to function in the community is much less. And so there are people that do need to be hospitalized for different periods of time, and yet the pendulum swung so far the other way that folks were literally being dumped into communities where they were having community groups trying to deal with problems that they weren't equipped to do.
And at that time, too, I'll also point out, it was an improperly run place on many levels. I still remember when the kitchen inspector came and they told us, even though we were activity workers, to go clean up the kitchen. which we found out was his way of slipping the envelope to the kitchen inspector, who never actually made it to the kitchen to see all the cockroaches that we could never get rid of. And on top of it, the medication, which actually at times I would dispense, even though I was not even qualified to be an activity worker, to be honest with you. You know, at least I played games with them and was active with them, but they got me because it was minimum wage. I mean, but I would pass out the medication sometimes, you know, and it was like everybody was on Thorazine. They were which if you're not familiar with Thorazine, was basically like taking a hammer to somebody's head and making them go duh. So they'd walk around dull all day and not be able to do very much.
Yeah, and see, at the heart of it, there was a lot of very thoughtful people who spent a great deal of time, people much smarter than myself, to put a thoughtful process together for people with different types of illnesses. And the problem was, though, is that the funding never came through. And so as a result of that, a lot of these well-meaning people were left just scrambling to try to make things work. And so did you have facilities that were not properly monitored? Yes. Did you have facilities that were over their heads and the people they were dealing with? Yes. Were there people then that were probably not getting the proper type of medication that they deserve? Oh, God, yeah. So you had all this mess going on, but then once again, instead of saying, you know, let's have a real thoughtful type of solution come forward, it was more just, you know, well, let's just ignore it. We'll keep underfunding it because
Right.
who's going to complain, really? I mean, a lot of the mentally ill people that, you know, a lot of them we deal with, they'll be the first to tell you that they have the greatest families in the world and that they've burnt them out, that all the different problems they've had in going off their meds and the different things that have occurred as a result of that, their families rightfully no longer can handle it. And so as a result of that, when it comes to like the lobbying world and who's going to really force the government to fund these things properly, they don't have a lot of voices. They have these great activist groups like NAMI, and you know, there's Thresholds, and there's other places, phenomenal folks. But outside of them, it doesn't have the groundswell that you'll get in some of the other areas, so that when the cuts are going on, it seems as if the mental health world is usually at the front of the line when the cuts occur, and then the result of it is, where are people going to go that have these illnesses? Well, there's one place that can't say no, that's the jail. And so the jails and prisons really throughout the country have just been overwhelmed with mentally ill individuals, the majority of which should not be in there in the first place. And the majority of them, unfortunately, are getting the best treatment they've had in years in the jails and prisons, and that's what the detainees, they tell me all the time. So we have a very unfortunate situation that we've been very aggressive in, and we see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. We see a lot of solutions that are actually being implemented, not just talked about. So we're very excited about that, but it just is a very overwhelming thing.
Yeah, let me, you know, I don't know if this is exactly your topic, but I know some of these people are going to wind up in county jail. We're not, you know, running my CAPS meetings the last 19 years. There's group homes and there's group homes. As a matter of fact, right here, about 25 feet that way, there's a group home. But that's ladies with Down syndrome. Okay, I mean, frankly, the workers are a bigger pain than the ladies there.
Yeah.
And the workers really aren't a pain, but that's not, I don't consider that a problem. What is a problem, and we've got a couple of them here, speaking of thresholds, and that's what reminded me, is the group home for the troubled teens. There is one group home in my beat about a mile away from here where I think 7 or 8 of the 12 people have warrants out for them. Or are in some state of arrest or waiting for court.
Yeah, well, you know, if there's warrants for people, then folks ought to contact us, because we, like the Chicago Police Department, we execute warrants, and we have some types of warrants, they have other ones.
No, actually, I'm getting to the group home issue. I'm misleading you a little bit, and I didn't mean to do that.
No, it's okay. I get misled on a regular basis.
Well, yeah, you're in politics. They have to mislead you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But no, I'm talking about in terms of, you know, I like the group home idea in general. I like the idea of integrating people into the community. The group homes for troubled teens, though, I mean, it causes a lot of crime in those areas.
Well, you know, it's interesting you should talk about that. The Tribune just today has started a series, I think it's like a 4-day series, specifically talking about teens in the child welfare system, specifically referencing group home issues, runaway issues, crime issues. They're doing a fantastic job, from what I understand, hitting this in a very, very thorough way. I mean, today's article was a 4-pager, which, that's a lot of, space to devote to a topic. But this is just today's. They have 4 more days coming up. But at the heart of it, it's talking about the fact, just sort of like the mental health system, where there's just not a lot of real thoughtful planning here. Once again, very good people trying to take care of children who, because of things that have been done to them, more often than not, are difficult children to work with. They run away a lot. And I don't blame DCFS for that. I mean, these children have been horribly damaged over the years, more often than not by their own families. And so they put them in different home settings. And the problem I have, though, is that the system is ignoring the fact that because of a lot of the issues these kids have, they're running away all the time. And they're running away. Sometimes they come back right away. Sometimes it's a day later. Sometimes they don't come back. And the problem is that there has to be more thought put into how is it we're going to deal with this group of children who have these very, very serious issues. And so for them, there needs to be more resources devoted to them in a more clinical way. And it's, as they say, a lot of really great people working on these issues, and I mean that really sincerely, trying real hard. A lot of them have had ideas much superior to mine, but this issue in particular with child welfare, I worked on it for 11 years down in Springfield and was always understood to be the person that was leading working on that issue. So I know it pretty well, and historically it's been an issue that has really not been addressed. And it's because of, I think, sensitivities where people start talking about locked homes, where it's the people say, well, they're like mini prisons. And it's like, well, no, there needs to be a thoughtful response. And I can tell you firsthand from our experiences, a lot of these children have had such trauma done to them. They need to be in a situation where they can be stabilized. And the notion that we cannot cut back on their ability to run for a short period of time to get them stable so we can get them in a better setting, that is just so outrageously naive. And so what ends up happening, then you'll have some group homes that are incredibly well run, very thoughtful people. There'll be other ones, and we've experienced some of them, where these kids are coming and going, they're running, they're getting involved with criminal activity, they're getting victimized horribly. We just had a case down in the south suburbs where 2 young girls had left the home, and then they alleged that they were sexually assaulted a short distance away too, and they had run away. And it's very complex, but it is solvable if we're willing to put the time and the resources into it. It's never going to be perfect, but it'll be better.
No, let me ask you this, because one of the problems I have with the system in general, and by the system I don't just mean the system we're talking about in particular, but I think sometimes when you try to jam one thing down everybody's throat, as opposed to give people individual creativity to deal with situations, it can be a very limiting factor sometimes.
Oh, it is. And that's where, as I say, there's a lot of different nuances to some of the different programs, but if anybody were to tell you that, they're all given with the specific missions, no, please don't try to go down that road with us. We know that that's not true. Some of them are more specifically geared toward certain populations. The problem is with a lot of these kids, I'll be just honest with you, a lot of these kids, they're so damaged that they need a lot of resources. And it's always been a question of whether or not those resources are going to be provided to help these children. And it's not always been the case. There's been a lot of different groups that I know of at different times who have had to close their doors because their funding got cut off. But their service it wasn't because their service wasn't needed, it's just it couldn't be afforded anymore. And so there's been a lot of people who've put a lot of thought into it, but the notion that somehow you can have this cookie cutter type thing and that they're going to be jammed into this category or that one, it's wrong. It doesn't work that way. And to give this problem its due, and when you think about it, I always tell people too, I go, think about it for a second here too. We're not even in the realm of talking about kids who have committed crimes. The kids we're talking about have been abused by loved ones, so they've been the ones that have been hurt. Don't we owe them a much higher level of resources, involvement, all the rest of it, and that's where it's always fallen down.
Yeah, I think that, this country has a lot of priorities that are completely screwed up, and
it
I think
really
an ounce
is.
of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as my mother always used to say.
It really is, and whether you're talking about children in these type of settings, you're talking about the mentally in the jail, or you talk about the other, larger group of people in the jail that don't necessarily have a diagnosed mental illness issue, what is a thoughtful way to do with it is to put thought into plans for them when they leave, exit strategies. This notion that somehow you being held in my jail for a year, waiting on your trial, and then say you either get probation and you walk out the door, or you get a sentence of a year, so you've already served it and you're walking out the door. Whatever it might be, the notion that somehow all the different things in the jail have made you a better person and now you're better suited to face a tough community, I mean, come on. What are we talking about here? What needs to be done, whether it's in a probation type of setting or something similar to that, is a very, very thoughtful case management type system where people are almost hand-holding the folks as they're leaving the jail. Not necessarily because, you know, everyone's, all these bleeding hearts. You know, you can throw that aside. For economic reasons. We do not want this person re-engaging in the criminal justice system. It's very expensive. We do not want them further damaging these neighborhoods that they've come from. That's very expensive. So let's put more thought into what is it that we need to do to break the cycle. We do a lot of programming in the jail, you know, for educational programming, job skills and things like that, but it really is not hitting the larger group that you need to be hitting here. And so as a result of it, frequently you're just churning people back out into the streets, no better off than when they came into it. And then I always ask people, I go, well, what are you expecting the results to be? Are you expecting these outrageous successes? There's these epiphanies that are occurring on the street out in California there? It's like, no. No, there has to be a lot more focus into identifying the issues that brought people in and then coming up with practical, thoughtful solutions for when they leave, that at least we can say it's more than just throwing people out into the street.
No, it makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. You know what? Believe it or not, we're down to only 7.5 minutes left, which is usually a full interview for other people.
Wow.
But I want to hit other topics too. So what do you want? Whatever you like.
No,
you know this stuff better than I do.
Yeah, I know. It's, you know, we have so many we're working on. We've been incredibly engaged with trying to work on the child trafficking issue. That's something we've been working on for, God, a good 7 years now. We've made some steps forward. The biggest problem, though, has been some of the people involved with it. Obviously, they're despicable people, but they have taken advantage of the new technologies that are out there and the new social media sources that are out there as well. That, you know, we knew that they'd sometimes try to access Facebook and things like that, but now they're actually using Twitter and things like that for all the wrong purposes. And those entities have been very helpful in trying to stamp this out. But then you have the other uses of the internet, such as places like Backpage. It used to be Craigslist, but they got out of the business. But Backpage, where it's basically become a forum for people shopping for prostitution.
Well, completely, but Craigslist a little bit too. I mean,
Craigslist has gotten so much better.
Away.
Yeah, it's so much better though. So much better than what it was.
Because that was one of the things I liked early on. Is you were the first guy to really attack these people, and deservedly. By the way, I never would have known about Backpage if it hadn't been reading. If I didn't see it in the paper. And then, of course, my dirty little mind told me, well, you got to go at least check it out.
Yeah, well, you know, that's the people, whenever I'll bring it up.
I can't afford that stuff either.
Oh, please.
They're expensive.
Oh, God. You know, those.
And yucky.
Well, I always tell people, I go, listen, I'm not trying to become the moral police here. I'm not trying to tell people how to live all their lives, all that stuff. But children and people being held against their will are being shopped on these different sites, and horrible things are happening to them. We can enter into the discussion about, you know, the whole free will involved and whether or not a woman who does not apparently have any other connections to other individuals, but yet is it really her free will that she's out there doing it? I mean, this person has all these issues. The person's a train wreck, and this is why they're out there.
And you know what? When you take somebody when they're so young, and I try to tell people, you know, like we've done a little bit of it on the air, depending on who the guest is. Unfortunately, the Chicago Police Department. The whole city of Chicago appears less and less on the show. It's part of their lack of transparency issues. But
maybe you can't get a hold of them like you couldn't get a hold of me.
Well, actually, if I really wanted to try harder, I should have. And Sonny and I were actually ready to commit a crime and go to jail in order to get you on the air.
Please don't do that. I have enough people there, and God knows what cell we'd find for you. It'd be probably pretty tricky. We'd have to give you a whole division all to yourself. But I always tell people I'm actually easy to find. If you just show up at the jail, I'm there usually 10 or 11 hours a day.
No, and by the way, we should probably, because I'm serious, I've actually talked to Sonny about the idea of coming down to film you because it's been too long.
You know, you should, because there's other people because I mean, we like to be very, very transparent, and I'll be honest with you, I feel that way on principle, but the other part of it is the nature of what I do, my office that we do, it's very, very difficult. Problems are going to occur. We have some very violent people in that jail, so some bad things are going to occur. I'd much rather have it to where the media at least is going to give us the benefit of the doubt, saying, listen, they're not trying to cover it up, they're not hiding it. They invite us in all the time, they show us around, they give us the access to the place. So we always encourage people, come out and see what
actually, before you had that award-winning series on Discovery, you were actually encouraging Sonny and I to come down to the jail. We just weren't sure what side of the bars you wanted us on.
Well, that was part of my ruse to get you there, though, because we were actually going to lock you up, but that was a whole other story. But yeah, I mean, I would encourage you guys to come down there. It is an interesting place, not just
And by the way, I've actually been on a jury there.
You know what? I was a state's attorney years ago, and I've often told people, as much as people sit there and moan about, oh my God, I got jury duty, I cannot tell you. The majority of cases are, 1-2 day cases. So it's about 1 or 2 days of your life. And virtually everybody that I would talk to jurors afterwards all would say the same thing. I dreaded coming here to do this, and boy, I absolutely enjoyed this.
I am so glad I did it. Well, first of all, as you know, I'm interviewing judges all the time. So the more I get, it was a great view from the other side, number one. It gave me a whole different respect and angle on the criminal justice system. By the way, I also used to be there in the mid-'70s. Among other papers, at one time I was the token white guy on the Daily Defender covering grisly murder stories.
Oh God, I didn't know you were with the Defender, yeah.
Not for a very long time, and you actually, through the Chicago Public Library, you can actually look up one of my old murder stories that made page 2.
Yeah, well, things have changed so dramatically, Avi. They used to be full complement of, all the newspapers at 26 in California. Now there's just a handful that are there anymore because the cutbacks in the media world have been so severe.
No, the cutbacks are severe, and the fact is that they're looking for flash from a different side. At the time, I actually covered it was a grisly story. We don't have time to get into it, but 6 people got killed, and they made the boys watch their sisters get raped, burned the house down. It barely got a line in the white newspapers.
Well, the thing with it's interesting because the different crimes that go on out there, how they're covered and when they're covered. Most of the people in the media I talk to will tell you it isn't scientific. It isn't, this one will get covered, this one won't get covered, and all the rest of it. And it's a shame, but it seems as if the only way you get some covered, they have to be really grisly. And I think, unfortunately, it's we're in a society where violence is all too common, whether it's real violence or whether it's the stuff on TV. And I'm not trying to sit there and say, get it off the TV. No, I'm not saying that. But it's such that there's not much that shocks the conscience anymore. And so the things
That's true.
I mean, because we get cases that don't even dent the newspaper with people being killed and things like that. And I don't blame them, but it's just not something of interest at times.
One thing I want to say real quick, this is years ago, but 2 of my friends did not want their children watching TV growing up. And they were about 4 and 5 years old. They're kids. They were over at the grandparents' house. They saw TV for the first time in their lives. They saw somebody killed on TV. They started crying.
Yeah.
The grandparents thought they were nuts.
Yeah. See, we don't watch a lot of TV in our house, and it's not just because we don't have cable access to have you on 24/7 loop, but it's because of
By the way, I don't have cable either.
Oh yeah, but we just don't have time. We're so busy,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's as they say, it's a different world we have out there. I'm glad that your show does what it does and covers a lot of the local stuff and a lot of the local issues, so people can access that. But it's tricky out there, and a lot of the people in the media you talk to are just really good people who wish they had more of an opportunity to cover a lot of these other things. But it's just the dynamics have changed a great deal.
Yeah, well, you know what? After the election, I'm going to get Sonny, and you were nice enough to come here. We're going to come down to see you. Although I might be at 26 a little earlier because I got a advance on a postponement on my last jury summons.
Okay.
So I'm about 10 weeks away from getting my next invitation.
All right. Well, we'll look for you there, and Sonny, we will let you out. Him? Not too sure. Not too sure.
Listen, I want to thank you very much, Sheriff Tom Dart. It's always a pleasure. You have an open invitation to come here anytime. Benjamin Bright, thank you so much for arranging this. And I want to thank all of you for being here. Bye, everybody.